Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of BSN's A Long Story Short. Today, we are focusing on the intersection between blockchain technology and the legal field. Legal tech, or LawTech, has been much more resistant to adoption than other sectors, partially due to the traditional nature of the field, the customs, and the rules. So joining me to pass a verdict on this topic today are three distinguished guests. We have Brian Tang, who is the founding executive director of Lite Labs at Hong Kong University. We have Rosa Barresi, who is an associate member of the Blockchain and Artificial Intelligence for Business, Economics, and Law at the University of Florence. And David Fisher, the founder and CEO at Integra Ledger. All right, so before we begin, I'd like to throw in a quick reminder that you can find our information for Twitter at BSN Base, or you can search for us on LinkedIn and view the website down below. Well, now why don't we begin here by giving our panelists a chance to share a little bit about their backgrounds and how they got where they are and get to know everybody. Does anyone want to volunteer to start, or should I pick somebody out of the crowd?
Ladies first.
Okay, thank you for having me for the invitation. My name is Giovanna Barresi. I'm a lawyer specializing in corporate and financial matters, and I hold a master degree from Fordham University in banking, corporate and finance law. And I stayed in New York for 10 years, where I practice my profession. And I'm also a member of BABEL, blockchain, and artificial intelligence for business, economics, and law at the University of Florence. And also I established a LawTech team. This is a not-profit organization for because I really believe that it's important to now understand the interconnection among the law and the new technologies. So the idea is to transforming the legal profession in something new due to this new opportunity. And so I can give the floor to the other guests. Thank you.
Sounds good, Rosa. Brian, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks so much. Hi, my name is Brian Tang, and you can tell Ben lives in China. He said Tang correctly, but 我会姓陈. It's a long story, so Tang is fine. I did my first law degree in Australia and my second one in New York. Practiced at Sullivan Cromwell in New York, as well as Silicon Valley during the dot-com boom, and then got headhunted to join Credit Suisse here in Hong Kong. Where I was covering capital markets, ECM, DCM, M&A, and doing IPOs, right? So then a few years ago, in what my wife calls an early midlife crisis, I stepped away and went into startup land. So whether it was FinTech and RegTech, and then online capital markets was an area of interest. So when the ICO world came about, people were looking towards me, but I said, I'm a US securities lawyer, and that sounds like a security to me, even though people were saying it wasn't. I joked that I blamed David for entering into the legal tech space. So in the RegTech space, I'm part of the FinTech Association and promoting that. But then I heard about this thing called the Global Legal Hackathon. I said, wow, fantastic, lawyers doing hackathons and embracing technology. Who's organizing it in Hong Kong? Nobody was. So I said, look, if somebody will underwrite it, I'll organize it. Our team made it to the finals when Thomson Reuters hosted it, and they won in New York. So from there, Hong Kong, you tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, listen, we believe that this is really important for the future of the profession. Would you help, help us lead a new initiative? So I created Lite Lab, Law, Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship. So as Rosa said, it really is in the intersection of each of those facets, right? So how do we get lawyers to understand and embrace the technology? How do technologies change? How do technologies impact the way law, works, right? And the laws apply to that. And so through that, it's been a fun journey working with organizations like Alita or the Legal Hackers. And we're blessed that we've now been nominated for the FT's Innovative Lawyers Award, which I think David has something to do with as well. So it's all comes round. It all comes round. Over to you, David.
Great. So I am not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. The way I got into this field, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I started multiple companies in the finance and development space, real estate development, that is, nationally in the United States. About 6 years ago, one of my law firms asked me for a favor, and the favor was as a client to give them feedback on how they could do a better job as a law firm. And they had done wonderful work for me, so I was happy to do that favor. And it was supposed to be 2 days of in-office, advice and help and client perspective. That turned into 2 weeks. I became very fascinated by sort of the business of law, and that 2 weeks ultimately resulted in the founding of what is now Integra Ledger, which is the enterprise blockchain for the world's legal industry. Along that journey, founded the Global Legal Blockchain Consortium with about 350 institutions around the world. Founded the Global Legal Hackathon that Brian mentioned. And we're also the global partner of the Financial Times with respect to the legal industry and legal innovation. And so I live and breathe ecosystem. Blockchain technology is ecosystem technology. I think that's important to mention because I think that's a key reason blockchain is different in legal tech versus other technologies. And we can talk more about that as we get into things.
All right. Thank you, David. Brian and Rosa, I noticed you both did stints in New York City. Is that a prerequisite for becoming a FinTech lawyer?
Well, you're asking me? I don't think so. I mean, it's a good, excellent opportunity, but it's not absolutely a requisite. Absolutely not. Everyone and everyone, every part of the world can do it if they want it. That's my opinion.
My twist on that great question is, as you and both of you, are from States. So there's kind of a perception of the East Coast lawyer and the West Coast lawyer. So, right, the New York style lawyer, regulatory, right, and because that's where bank regulators are. I remember when I spent time on the West Coast, they work in unregulated spaces, right? So and it took me a while to understand that mindset. So when FinTech actually collided, to me it was only a matter of time. I joked that originally the FinTechs were like, we're here to disrupt banking. We're going to replace banking. We're going to have your lunch. Now, most FinTechs, the biggest clients are banks, right? So what's happening with regulators? The regulators are coming back, right? So the biggest FinTechs in the world in China are now the regulators showing who's boss, right? So alas, I don't think it's a prerequisite, as Rosa said. I mean, the reality, especially with places like finance and blockchain, laws are evolving in so many different ways across the world, and I think we can learn from one another. So to try to hopefully balance innovation and consumer protection.
I agree 100%.
All right, before we fall too far down the rabbit hole, I think we should back up. And, it seems like a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they're kind of in this industry because it found them, right? But based on your introductions, it seems like you guys actually went out and found legal tech and then worked hard to build it yourselves. So I'm curious, like maybe we could do like a real basic question here and just talk about what this law tech or legal tech actually means, and then what the scope is. What does it cover? Anyone can take this one.
Can I?
You can.
It's really a curious thing because many thinks that legal tech and law tech are the same, and you agree or not, but we have to remember that Richard Susskind made these big differences. And according to him, and we can disagree or not, he says that the legal tech cover the technologies that the lawyers use to do their work, like e-discovery, artificial intelligence and machine learning, document review, while LawTech covers more the software used to deliver the product for the client, like legal chatbot or online marketplace. even though there is this, he made this distinction, most authors believe that legal tech has a wider meaning that include LawTech. So we can, I think that we can just say that are almost synonyms. And then they are used to also not only in the legal profession but also outside. For example, for in finance, in insurance, in banking, for automated document production or remote contract signature, or smart legal contract you can use in maritime contracts like letter of credits. So this is something that at the end, I think we can say that they are almost the same in the common use, But if you want to be precise, we should remember what Saskin said. Okay.
I have a slight twist to that. So my take is that when I see how legal tech is often used, it's used to apply, as I think as Rosa said, to tech that's used by law firms, right? But the thing is that law permeates so many different things. Law is not just about law firms. And so I personally like the word law tech as a broader kind of phrase. But remember, coming from where I do, so in financial services and, where they use the word reg tech. So to me, that's a continuum, right? You see so much reg techs now actually providing legal tech, or legal tech, law techs are doing, reg tech. But then as you look at law tech that it can apply to government related matters, you end up with gov tech. You've got soup tech. You've got, civ tech, right? So to me, it is a continuum. It is a alphabet soup. But I like the word law tech because I think it applies to both the private sector as well as the public sector, and not just the law firms. That's my take.
David, do you have anything to add on there? I see you smiling about all the different uses of the words.
No, I would defer to my colleagues here for this. I'm not an academic in any way, purely for profit. So I have my own thoughts, and I'll share them later.
Excellent. Something that I believe Brian brought up earlier about like big institutions now being the FinTech and the LawTech, the biggest clients, right? But then, when we first started hearing about this, in the technology sector, a lot of it was about things like banking the unbanked, providing legal services for people who don't have any. Where do you see us sitting in that paradigm now? And I'm assuming this is probably a broad spectrum, but maybe you could share a little bit about how that works.
Should I jump in?
Go for it.
So what was on my mind during the prior comments is, and as someone who has never practiced law, I've been a consumer of legal services throughout my career, my life, and it's been critical. It's been the service and support and advice I've received from my law firms and lawyers over the years has been absolutely critical to my successes with various companies I've run. That fuels some of my passion for my involvement in this, as I see how important it has been to me to have access to those services. But what I was going to comment on is I think legal tech is different in significant ways from, say, FinTech or various other techs, in the sense that the legal industry is almost by name about interpreting and applying the rules for everything else, as opposed to being an end good that is being delivered to someone. So in other words, the legal industry, just by its very nature, is an intermediary industry. And so legal tech, by its very nature, is about really efficient delivery of that sort of intermediary service rather than the end service. And to put a finer point on that, if you think about a contract, right? So a contract between two parties has, any type of contract, the delivery of some tangible value, a service, something's being exchanged. There's almost always a payment mechanism or layer to that. And so FinTech is significantly about answering the question of what's that payment mechanism? How is that efficient? And what's been lacking in the world has been sort of a technology interpretation for the legal layer to it, right? And we're used to that legal layer being prose effectively, but people often talk about blockchain technology as the payment rail, for the internet. What about the legal rail? And so I think a lot of this is about the digitization of law and delivery of services. And so I think ultimately the way I would frame this is, how is that rail, right, which is part of that stack of kind of every human interaction, right? So if law is the rules, digitizing that, how is that rail constructed, digitized? I mean, that's legal tech.
Maybe
I think Yeah, go ahead, Brian. That was a very good explanation, but maybe Brian can add something on there.
Oh, no, and again, just a slightly different slant. So to address your specific question, as you know, with FinTech, there was access. They talk about financial inclusion, right? And dare I say it, some FinTechs are more really addressing financial inclusion than others, right? Similarly, with the phrase in legal tech or law tech is really around access to justice, right? And so I think the way that David described it is quite right, especially as it relates to transactions between parties, right? But I think the law is complicated in that it's transactions between parties, it's interaction with the state, and between states, and then there's also dispute resolution, right? So when I kind of think about the ways that law tech can apply, so firstly, it's about process offering. Right. So how processes, a lot of things in law is about process and due process and the like. So how can we actually simplify that? How do we ensure that there are, the manual repetitive stuff can all be, done away with? Secondly, it's about insights. So using data, how can you use data to actually get insights that we humans might not have otherwise discerned, right? And this is where the AI machine learning kind of stuff actually comes in. And the last but not least, it's the UX. So I think, as David said, it's the consumer side. So now, as a corporate consumer, you consume it in a certain way. As an in-house consumer, I was an in-house lawyer. My in-house, clients consume a different way. The layperson on the street, they need to consume law too. So how do they consume it? And it's all in different ways. So there are different UXs that again, what we can do with law tech is make it more accessible.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Of course.
I absolutely agree with what Brian said, and think of the equal access to the legal service and justice is something really, really important. And the OSHA also put this like one of the goals to be reached by 2030. And connect this goal with the income of the different countries. So kind of, if you have a high income countries, you have the need to be the unmet need of justice, for example, for the consumer or housing issues. If you are in the middle income countries, you have other issues like employment or housing tenure. And what they pointed out in the low middle income countries, their unmet needs are for criminal justice. So even this is an element to put in evidence, to remember. So that's why the financial inclusion is so important. It's so a topic that we really have to develop and try to solve.
Yeah, I think all three of your answers really put that all in perspective. And, David took a real tech angle and then more of a social angle, I guess, from Rosa and Brian. I think one more question before we jump into the blockchain portion of the conversation. I am curious because this pandemic is just raging on I think we're in like year 5 or 6 by now, it feels like. How like at the beginning, everyone said this was going to really accelerate technology, and we did see it somewhat at the beginning. How have you seen it in the law tech or legal tech space? Is it accelerating things still for you? Maybe someone, I'd be curious, maybe David, because you're on the technology side, maybe this would be a good one for you to lead on.
Sure. Of course, when the news of the pandemic broke, I guess in early 2020, I was and working on what we consider to be bleeding edge technology in a conservative industry. I was worried that all interest would fall off a cliff, and so I started working very, very hard defensively on the worry that there would be no appetite for any sort of risky new investments in technology. We discovered the opposite was the case. So no question, we've seen just as an organization, Integra has seen major acceleration in interest, investments, engagement, that sort of thing. I think there was a famous McKinsey study now that was in, I think, earlier mid 2020 that suggested that the pandemic had accelerated tech adoption by about 5 years. I'm not sure I could empirically prove or disprove that, but my personal experience has been that tech adoption has accelerated. I should also mention that, or add the caveat that we started from a relatively, I don't want to say primitive, but certainly less developed state than FinTech. And so to say that we've accelerated by 5 years, we still probably need to accelerate by another 10 years to catch up. But I've seen acceleration.
Excellent. Brian, you're in more of a lab situation there where you're working with startups. So maybe you would have a different insight as well.
Yeah. So I kind of, what I've observed, I call it the tale of two cities. I think when COVID first hit, it depended, like in RegTech, if you're in LawTech, you're in certain spaces, you were doing well, right? So if you're in communications, you're in e-signatures, you're in remote knowledge management, that was all great. But, in the earlier days of the COVID crisis, again, there were lots of reports of cash flow stopping, right? I mean, law firms who weren't on Zoom, like, oh my God, right? So immediately they all got the Zoom sign up, right? Hence the Zoom stock went up, right? So all of a sudden, so you need to get on Zoom first. You need to get access to your files. You need to do all that. Once you did that, you could start running, right? So I think, so those ones did really well. I think there were quite a few LawTechs that I do know of that actually stalled because they were not as high priority. I think fast forward, I think things are now that people are now appreciating in law firms and corporate counsel appreciating that working from home is going to be part of the new reality, right? The fact of working remotely becomes so important. So I think things have certainly taken on the uptick. Is it still easy? Not necessarily. It depends on who the ultimate buyers are. And again, these days I spend more time with corporate counsel than with law firms. And with corporate counsel, they're still trying to do more with less. And by the way, you may not get the budget to do that kind of stuff. So it is still a challenge, but I think I'm optimistic like David as well.
I think the same, in the sense that Italy was one of the first countries that was hit by the pandemic in Europe. And at the beginning, for the first 2 months, everything was just stopped. People were crazy, were not any idea of what they are going to do. And after the initial shock, they realized the only way to be connected was to improve their knowledge, the digital knowledge. And so now we can also talk about digital literacy. That this is another story. But that means that LawTech, after the initial block in all sector, then it start have an improvement a lot. And like Brian say, working from home was something that people was happy to do it. It was the only way to be in relation with the other. And definitely that was also an improvement for the coverage of a fiber to the home service, because even the speed of a connection for internet became an issue. And because now everybody needs more bands. So, and the lawyer, and I think at that moment they understood that they have to change the way of thinking. I mean, I think that was really the beginning of something like kind of shock, really shock. I don't mean that before that people not was aware of, but that moment was like, okay, we have to change our approach because we don't know where we are going to go. So yeah, definitely there was an increase of LawTech.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. I think it's time we switch to the heart of this discussion, which obviously is the blockchain service network. We should be talking about blockchain in the role that it's playing. So maybe we can start with Rosa and tell us a little bit more about where you're seeing blockchain in the LawTech sector these days.
Okay, I can, if you would like to, more for the Italian perspective, in the sense that we have a kind of regulation that has a kind of difference from as part of the world. I see that the use case that we have is more used here is the notarizing content, because and this is why I said there is the problem with the regulation, because in Italy we have the notary, but the notary has asked Italy and other European countries. We are not the only country, and where the function of notarize something is delegated to the public official that are exactly the notaries, and cannot delegate it to technical means. So after this saying that, the public notary is now actually this profession kind of changed, because they cannot don't recognize there is this new issue and this possibility. So since 2019, they start to accept this, and so we have using more for notarizing documents. The problem is that for the European administration, the payment that you can accept is only in euro, so euro-based payments. So we don't have this on blockchain. And this is going to be an issue. So maybe we can solve this issue when central bank, when and if we hope that central bank digital currency payable on blockchain. So in July, the European Central Bank officially started the Digital Euro project with a 2 years long feasibility study. So we are in that direction. That's what we are looking for.
Very interesting. David, you're developing these solutions, so maybe you're the expert here. What kind of light can you shed on this?
Yeah. So, back to my prior comments about let's use the internet anecdotally. Mm-hmm. So you have the actual exchange of value or relationship. You have a payment rail, and there's a legal rail. And I think what we've been working on for years is applying blockchain technology to the legal rail in general. I think most application of blockchain to date has been related to payments specifically, and digitizing things, or representation of things in the physical world, with the latest boom being in NFTs. Non-fungible tokens. So blockchain, by and large, has been used to create sort of a digital way to move value in general. That's interesting, and so that's the primary way the world understands blockchain technology. We see blockchain technology as fundamentally the technology of digital trust, and we think that's profound for an industry that is really founded on the notion of trust, social trust. So it's civil law, criminal law, and it's trusted interactions between advisors, in the legal industry, and clients, whether they're individual, corporate, government, whatever. We've seen very little application of blockchain technology to the digitization of law. And I can speak, I think, authoritatively on that. Again, as the global partner of the Financial Times, we interact with institutions worldwide, both law firms and their clients of every type. Apart from very niche use cases, for example, digital notary, there have been very few instances where blockchain technology has been applied. I will interject that we think the fact that a little bit like mobile phone service in Africa, where when that finally emerged on the scene, it allowed an entire continent to skip one technology, an entire generation or two of technology, which is wireline phone service, and go straight to mobile service throughout Africa. The way we're looking at the legal industry is one that has been less automated than other industries and sort of less technology driven. And we think blockchain, not surprisingly, given that I'm a blockchain company, we think that the legal industry may follow the Africa pattern for mobile technology, where because there are not so many legacy investments in sort of intermediate stage technologies, that it may make a jump all the way to digitization. Now, that's years off, but that's a general prediction of where that's going. So at the moment, relatively little penetration of blockchain in law tech or legal tech in general, but I think with a possibility that could become the most adopted of any industry.
Interesting. Brian, I think that, being with you deal with a lot of different startups, and then also dealing with the corporate councils. I mean, you must see a lot of use cases as well, or at least you're trying to push possible use cases to the corporate councils. What have you seen so far? Do you agree with David that things are a little bit slow going at the moment?
So I think, again, there are different levels to that. I think, so let me take a step back. I use a broad definition of LawTech, right? So number one. And then number two, the cool thing about blockchain is there's so many different facets of it. And David mentioned, the stored value aspect, right? And then there's, people talking about it as currency or as something that's tradable. But, as we all know, but that leads more towards the immutability aspect. So as we now know, speed is not blockchain's best suit, right? That's just hasn't been solved, right? But immutability, yes, right? For better or for worse. Okay, so that's why it's good for stored value. But there are use cases that are being used in different means. And again, maybe this is where David doesn't see it as much because it's being used more in the public dispute resolution side, right? So China, where you are, Ben, right, has got 3 internet courts, right? The internet courts themselves now actually use blockchain as part of the evidence chain, right? And I just quickly flipped through it before coming on the call. So Guangzhou just allowed the first, what they call cross-examination system. So if you submit evidence, it's put on the blockchain, so it's therefore immutable and therefore acceptable as evidence, right? So the Chinese system is acknowledging and using blockchain as part of its dispute resolution. So similarly, there are other initiatives on the online dispute resolution side that are trying to use blockchain. So Hong Kong, for example, is trying to position itself as a dispute resolution hub, vis-a-vis what they previously would call, the One Belt, One Road, or whether it's part of Greater Bay Area and the like. So recently they created something called the Hong Kong Cloud. So before we get to that, they introduced the concept of EBRAM. So dispute resolution, right? So if we're going to do online dispute resolution, all this was before COVID, right? If we're going to do online dispute resolution across multiple jurisdictions, we need to store the evidence somewhere. We need to make submissions somehow, right? And so the idea was, yes, we can use blockchain to actually to transmit evidence, because if we are in different countries and we're going to have a dispute, how do I know that the evidence hasn't been tampered with across, et cetera, et cetera? So there are initiatives to do that. Hong Kong has now got a Hong Kong legal cloud concept. It's not clear whether they're going to have blockchain in that, but obviously immutability of evidence is important for that aspect. So that's key. And so I think there's so many different aspects. So to me, the most interesting part that blockchain can and hopefully will apply is with data. So we all know data has now become such a hot topic, and I've been classifying it in different ways. So one is data security, right? So i.e., you're not hacked, people not taking your data and stealing, corporate data, national security data, all that stuff, right? The second one is privacy, right? At first it was GDPR in Europe, thank you very much, that raised the bar. California has followed suit, and now China has PIPL. Right, all of them are raising to the top in terms of data protection for individuals and privacy. But now we've got an extra layer, which China has also introduced with cybersecurity, which is data cross-border. Right, so cross-border data is now, and data sovereignty has now become yet another issue that as we're dealing with in this modern day and age. Now, how do we allow for a lot of this data to cross from one to the other in a manner that fulfills safety aspects? So cryptography helps with the security, which fulfills the privacy aspect. So you got to make sure you have consent. Some things you can share, some things you can't. Similarly, with cross-border data, some things you can share, some things you can't. Blockchain and permissioned and other kind of platforms and can, I think, be a way forward. So I think that becomes quite an interesting solution. As in the fintech world, people are using blockchain for trade finance, again, cross-border, lots of application, right? Potentially. But but I think if you use cases which don't have speed, and law is not known for speed, right? But if you focus on the immutability aspects, that can be of great potential interest. We can go into other aspects which, question mark, smart contracts, right? If you ask enough lawyers, they all laugh, say, yeah, it's not a contract, it's not smart, I think even Vitalik is regretting using the phrase, right? So we can talk about that separately, but and there are pros and cons to those direct automations. But I think if we focus on the immutable aspect and the data protection side, I think there'll be lots of use cases for blockchain.
Thank you, Brian. Maybe Rosa can dive into that. You talked a bit about online dispute resolution. So maybe Rosa can jump into that topic a little bit.
Yeah, we can say that the online dispute resolution for the Europe we have already in the 90s. So the idea was just at the time we at the beginning, but was just something for basic, in the sense was for electronic invoicing and consumer-related problems, and we still have this European online dispute resolution. All beside the EU states can freely access to the platform. Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. But as I said, that was for the beginning of this was with the eBay dispute resolution. So for the consumer protection, and but we can say that it was not really what we really want to see. And one of the problem is to see if we want to go towards decentralized justice. This is something more. And at this point, we don't have something that really accomplish the international convention and about the arbitration. But we can, it's very interesting. I would just to add, because Brian already explained about the China situation, that China is very developed in this, because it was in 2017 was one of the court that already have the three type of dispute resolution for digital copyright, for financial contracts, and for internet service contacts. the important things that following this, after a case of infringement in China, there was this was established this online dispute resolution, and now there was following this case, there was a new rule that started taking effect on the 1st of August, according to the Chinese can use the Supreme Court rules and for storing the blockchain evidence. And this is something that is really, really important. And because among the other things, these rules give the possibility to include the authenticity of the blockchain evidence. So determine whether the electronic evidence has been altered before being stored on the chain. And this is something really, really amazing. And the other is we moved from China and we go back to Europe. We have the UK that in April 2021 made the new rule for the digital dispute resolution, but they are only under the UK law. So they can use just there, and the part involves they must sign that they want that if there is any issue that they want to be resolved with the online dispute resolution. And also this is something that is a good is a good thing, but still going to be the problem of certainty, and see if really can be something that can be considered like an insurmountable requirement, given that the blockchain principle of decentralization. So that is the situation right now on the online dispute resolution that we can consider absolutely.
Rosa, you brought up decentralized justice, and I know that term is being used. The decentralized term is being used more and more in decentralized governance, and now decentralized justice. Is that something you believe we'll be seeing in society?
Right now we don't have, but I think if we have a decentralized finance, we should have a decentralized justice as well. And that's is something that we don't have now, but I'm looking for that.
Do we have similar opinions from Brian and David?
I think what Rosa is touching on is something I mentioned earlier, which is, is blockchain just sort of a helpful addition? So the application to confirm the existence of evidence, for example, that's helpful. But the analog for that in banking would be to say, okay, the big banks will use blockchain to just confirm the validity of the accounts you already have. And as we've seen, blockchain has emerged in finance as a complete replacement. So like we don't even need, so it's not like you're adding blockchain to existing bank accounts to make them more trusted. They're saying, forget it, we'll skip the bank and go peer to peer in moving payments and moving value. And I think what Rosa is touching on gets at the heart of what I was talking about with the sort of leap forward, per Africa and mobile, which is the actual digitization of the law. So as opposed to being a helper technology, it becomes the central technology. So I actually wrote a chapter in a book on this about the potential to and the choice of law clause that's in many contracts. Usually it's a boilerplate clause that this will be governed by the laws of Italy or Hong Kong or New York or whatever. But I mean, there's this notion of digital autonomous organizations or decentralized autonomous organizations. That's coming for sure, and that represents this disruption, digitization. That's a long way off. I mean, that still has to exist within the context of governments and legacy governments and legal systems. But the notion that one day you'll be able to digitally link, a chosen body of law, that parties want to subscribe to, that certainly is coming. It's more controversial when it comes to citizenship, right? And like, can you just renounce citizenship and join a new digital entity? That may be 100 years away, but in terms of digitization for commercial purposes, I think that we'll surely see that in the next 10 to 20 years.
Brian, there must be something to add on here.
Certainly, lawyers, we can't keep quiet. I'll be the more conservative view on this one, I think, right? So I think idealistically, I can see certain benefits and appeal to the decentralization aspects. But if I'll raise a couple of examples of why there'll be, challenges and the like. I mean, so firstly with DAOs, right? So these days I do more research on the AI governance aspect. And with AI governance, the concern is, what if you have the Bostrom AI who's a maximizer of paper clips, and that's all it's doing. It's maximizing paper clips and the whole world will be a paperclip factory, right? That's kind of like a DAO, you're automating everything and you're letting it go and there's nobody responsible, right? So to me, I think, I don't think, people might be willing to go there, especially if we're trying to, contain the genie in the bottle. Now, whether we can control that is another story, right? And if the genie does go out. But I think people are appreciating that there are concerns about genies and letting them out that way. On the flip side also, while there's the push towards DeFi and the like, but something Rosa had mentioned and something that is quite current in our neck of the woods also is central bank digital currencies, right? What does that mean? It's a centralization of currency. It's not decentralized. It's just digitized, right? So yes, we're digitizing, but not decentralizing. So they are two different things, right? So and as some of these technologies get digitized, don't assume it means it'll be decentralized, because again, in our neck of the woods, what we're seeing now is, at least in China, there's a lot more regulation of technology, right? So and that's happening in places like Australia and elsewhere too. Big tech is on the defensive, right? So there will be more regulation, alas, in the next few years of technology rather than less. So that could lead to more centralization than decentralization. So I'm not as optimistic as my panelists here about decentralization. Maybe their time horizons are longer, but I can certainly see some of the appeal of that. But that discussion has been going on for a little while since Lessig's, code as law, right? So can we really codify all of this? And should it be immutable when we codify it? I don't know, because we change, people change, circumstances change. Do we want it to be immutable? Do we want everything to be immutable?
Yeah. Brian, do you take this conservative stance reluctantly, or do you think it's more wiser to be this in this way?
Oh, I'm certainly not wiser. Maybe it's more realistically, I think. I think again, it's nice to think. Again, I was a pol-sci philosophy major, so I can think wonderful utopian thoughts, but it ain't gonna happen necessarily, right? Because people are people, and we live under their laws of physics and laws of social society and the like. So that's what law does. It makes you ground things as opposed to think utopia. And
if I could engage this topic with Brian,
please.
So you're absolutely right. Everything has a social context and a digital context potentially, and decentralization adds a whole new realm there. But I would say you mentioned the genies and bottles. The genie is already out of the bottle. I mean, Bitcoin exists, Ethereum exists, right? And as much as various countries would like to try to regulate, Bitcoin, they're still marching forward. And so I would say that while that tension has always been there, there's never actually been a decentralized answer. And so I think what we're facing is much more profound in this case. It's not a question of digital centralization versus analog centralization. I think we already have the proof, especially via Bitcoin, that given the choice of and let's face it, Bitcoin does have its own governance built in, right? They all do. I mean, and if you choose to use Bitcoin, you're choosing that decentralized governance, for what it is, at least in technology or technological sense. So I think the genie is out of the bottle. And I think as much as there will continue to be this tension, the fact that there is now a decentralized answer, that's proven and broadly trusted. Like I said, the genie is out of the bottle. And so the friction, the tension is only going to grow because it's in many respects irreconcilable, and that's good. It's good to have that tension.
So I totally hear that. So my take on that is, nuclear technology exists. Do you want everybody to have it? Do you want every country to have it? Right. So the genie's out of the bottle, but do you want everyone to have it? So secondly, in relation to we'll see. I mean, very timely. But El Salvador.
But not every individual can build nuclear weapons, right? But for blockchain.
No. But that's it. But do you want everyone to have it, right? No, with the right pieces of tools, you can create your own, fusion reactor, right? With the right pieces, a lot of it is contraband, right? For better, for worse, right? So look at El Salvador. So when that happened, I actually sent something to my circles in the fintech and the blockchain world. I said, El Salvador, good or bad, discuss, right? Now Ukraine has got it in their parliament, right? In terms of introducing it. So it'll be, you're right, it is out there. Does it mean that it'll be ultimately good for people in El Salvador? I don't know. Let's see. Right?
I wasn't making an argument good or bad. I was simply saying that now that it exists, this is not like a new variation on cloud technology. It's a completely different paradigm. I mean, now peer-to-peer digital trust is possible, where previously it always relied on an intermediary. And the world is organized around social intermediaries, governments, banks, insurance companies, that sort of thing. And so I don't know where this goes, but I think blockchain is fundamentally different. And my point is that it's its own force moving forward. Integra is not in the payments world. We're simply building infrastructure for this. But I don't think it's correlated particularly with sort of the centralized world. I mean, it's relevant to this discussion of what's good, what's bad, but it's beyond the control. Obviously, it's beyond the control of normal central governments, as powerful as they are. I mean, most central governments would like Bitcoin to not exist, but it does.
So I guess. Sorry, I was just going to say to that, if I were to be normative, because you're saying if it's good or bad. So I would still, on balance, I do view that there is a role to curation, right? I do believe that there are these situations where you do need human intervention rather than just leaving it to, pure distributed, the wisdom of the masses. Right. And the like. So that's normatively where I stand on some of this, because I've seen situations where when you just leave it to the masses, it goes in directions that none of us had predicted, and net may not be a good thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I would little add that the centralized technology should in some way be regulated, in the sense that if regulators do not come there first, many decentralized technology will acquire the same no man's land status. So maybe we can also think about that. That's my idea.
Yeah, I didn't mean to open this can of worms by asking that, but I'm glad that we did because there's some good answers. I think maybe we can bring it back on track because we're coming up on the end of the hour here. I'm curious, like going forward, we've kind of talked about how we got here and then the present, obviously. But going forward, what is the role that you see maybe the organizations that you're with playing in the industry, or just things that you're seeing from other players in the law tech or legal tech space that you're excited about and you really want to see implemented? Maybe we can start with Rosa on this one.
Really, I see that we should. I'm talking about Italy. We should think that the state sector should improve its efficiency, because it's the best way to force a lawyer and law professional to follow. It's like when because I think that politicians didn't understand that most likely the judicial system is driving the innovation. They don't really think, they don't put really in evidence that. And it's like when you want to improve a truck design, and you, instead of improve the road, you just subsidize the truck industry. At the end, you don't have research and development activities. So I think you can make the parallel with the LawTech. It's the same. If you want that the law profession go together with the new technologies, you have to given efficiency to the state to allow the law profession to follow. That's is not something that you have to do on the back. That's what this is my idea. For example, I can make an example for Italy. For example, we had the problem with the minimum fees for law professional, and then at the end the state realized that it was not so good, and they abolished. And or for example, they decided just like a month ago to cut the average length of criminal processes of 25%. So this is something that indirectly impact on the legal profession, and so you can make step on that. That's what I think is important to keep and take in mind.
I don't think many would disagree with you on that one. David, how about yourself and the future of Integra?
So again, we're very focused on digital trust as applied to data. Brian mentioned data as really the significant driving idea, in the world and value. Blockchain brings trust to data, and I think the big story that's coming will be the synergy between digital trust technology, blockchain, and intelligence technologies. So if artificial intelligence operates across massive amounts of data to gain insight into what that data means and what you can do with it, if you trust your data more and you have more data, and that's enabled by the ability to govern it, for example, then the fusion of those technologies, or the synergy of those technologies, will create the conditions to not only digitize the rails of law, as I say, but create the circumstances where artificial intelligence can actually start to attack the core industry of law. I shouldn't say attack, but really start to impact it in a mainstream way, where you're applying knowledge and intelligence in a machine sense to massive amounts of trusted data. And I think as the two technologies develop and weave together, that's when you'll start to see this leap forward for the legal industry in a way that could put it at the forefront of most industries. I think that's going to be something that will emerge in the next, say, 3 to 5 years. So not 10, not 20. I think it's coming soon.
Okay. Brian, do you want to put your thoughts in here.
Sure. When I answer that question, it sounds a little bit intuitive, counterintuitive, because, we have so many advanced technologies that David's mentioned. You've got AI, you've got blockchain and all that. But what's recently kind of excited me is actually something quite low level-ish, no code, low code platforms, right? Because that really allows lay people, and especially lawyers who are very tech averse, to actually create tools and LawTech tools that help their real problems. And part of the things that we've done to try to address that one step further is very often that the lawyers or the in-house lawyers, they say, yes, they're the tools, but we don't have time to do that, right? We don't have budget to hire somebody to do that, right? So, but it's meant to be easy to do. So what we've done is we've got our students create those tools for them, right? So that's how easy it is. And that's our proposition. If even a law student can create this for you, surely you can do something. So last semester, we had students working with quite large organizations like HSBC, like FedEx, like Goodman, and they created LawTech tools for those departments, right? And so it's great to see that adoption and the helping those companies with their LawTech journey, but at the same time training the next generation of legal professionals. So I like the word legal professionals because it's not just the legal skills that Rosa and I grew up with. We need the tech skills that David has. We need the design skills. We need the business skills because the new business models. So I think that's what's kind of exciting. And LawTech, low code and no code allows for that entry level, and then to build from there as you build more visualization, more data analytics, more trust in, and trust is a great word, David. In all of this. So that's what excites me right now.
Excellent.
I agree 100%. I mean, I can say that really legal industry need to create a multidisciplinary teams inside of we cannot think about the old law firm. We have to change approach. So absolutely create multidisciplinary teams with all the background you need, technologies, IT consulting, finance, forensics expert, and cooperation with the university, with the research institution, and with the other law offices throughout the world. That's, I think, is going to be the future if we want a legal tech. And
one of my points of pride is Hong Kong U has got 10 faculties. I've got students from 6 faculties in my classes, right? We just don't currently have medicine, dentistry, and education. And next semester, I'll have architecture as well. Right. So again, it is that, we need to bring all the skill sets together to actually grow on LawTech, because this is law underlines our society, the way we live, the way we work in a hopefully equitable and just manner.
Absolutely.
All right. There's probably a million things that I could ask you guys from here. We barely even scratched the surface of how public blockchains and working with legal tech. So maybe that's a conversation we'll have to save for another day. I'm curious, before we sign off, if there's any way that you would, if anyone's listening, to get in touch or to follow or to buy your book or follow your Twitter or whatever you might want to present to the public. Maybe you can go ahead and share that now. Rosa, do you have anything? It's okay to say that.
No, we had just published an article on a digital euro and with Professor Zatti at the University of Florence, because right now I'm focused on central bank digital currency. So, but really we need, again, cooperation with a different task, different background for the better future for everyone.
Well said. David?
So the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, so David Fisher and Integra Ledger. You can also find me through the Global Legal Hackathon, with our giant worldwide event that Brian has mentioned. And speaking of Brian's low code and no code, Integra is about, I think in the next few days, going to announce and launch a whole suite of low code and no code tools to start to be able to, so people throughout the industry, legal industry around the world, will be able to add blockchain technology throughout the entire sort of legal technology stack in the ecosystem. So that's coming. So watch the news for that too.
I guess best way to get in touch with me also, as David said, is LinkedIn. Brian W. Tang. I do occasionally use Twitter, but don't count on me. That's, at Cap Markets Prof. And again, on publications, we have one coming out shortly, just to show the diversity of the space, right? So it's on RegTech and green finance. So how can RegTech be applied? And as you may know, blockchain is being used in ESG and green finance as well. So that's our next publication coming out. And it's done by one of our students in conjunction with the FinTech Association of Hong Kong.
Excellent. Well, I'll be sure to follow all of you. And then, yes, hopefully we can have another conversation very shortly in the future. So thank you once again for joining me. It was a great privilege to have this discussion, and we'll catch up again next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Good chatting, David and Rosa.
Hi.
All right, guys.